Welcome to Black Women Talk Back. Tonight we have the Black women trainers of the Roots of Justice team here to talk like we talk when we're talking. This is simply a conversation that we're giving you privy to as we talk about all the things that Black women talk about. The term talk back has various meanings and locations rooted in the works of people, of wonderful women, wonderful Black women like Alice Walker, Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, and Mitzi Smith. Smith writes about Black women's sass or talkback and understanding their survival and freedom to be interconnected with the well-being of the community. Some of us on this team tonight are educators, others are faith leaders, some are yoga instructors, small business owners, and leaders in nonprofit organizations. We won't take the time to read bios to you tonight, but you can look us up on the Roots of Justice website or just Google us if you need to find out more about us. So we're going to jump right in and start with some questions. Our first question, and anybody feel free to respond to this one. In your opinion, what are some of the most critical issues facing Black women today? Anybody? Regina?
Okay, yeah. What rises to the top of my mind out of the many things that we could talk about and probably will is health disparities. The pandemic that we are engaged in now has raised the awareness of a lot of people of things that some of us have known for a long time, that the health disparities that correlate with race and gender really impact the lives of Black women. And we're talking about something that is in operation from the time that we are born until we die. And it of course has to do with the way that we approach the medical professional field and clinics and hospitals, but it also is embedded in so many of the institutions that we deal with day to day. It's impacted by the places that we live, the jobs that we have, the access that we have to fresh food and clean air and safe places to move our bodies. And so health disparities are throughout all of life, and the gap seems to be getting wider and wider. So that's one of the ones that rises to the top for me.
Yeah. Anybody else? What do you think?
I mean, I would like to affirm, to piggyback on what you said, because this is what I've also seen out of this pandemic is the pathologizing and the marginalizing of Black people and Black women. Like, the reason why they're dying because morbid. And I'm like, why is there always something? But that has its roots. I mean, if we think about even the history of gynecology, the father of gynecology, James Sims, I mean, he used enslaved African women as guinea pigs without anesthesia. And he would do it in the operating surgery room with other physicians to teach how they can provide better care for white women. So, from the very beginning, so when we look at the medical field, from its inception, there is an understanding about the lack of value of Black women's bodies, the right to treat Black women's bodies any kind of way, and then the access is just so limited. I also think about Harriet Lacks. Is that a
yes?
Henrietta, yeah. What cancer is solved because of her DNA.
That's right.
But yet she and her family can't get health care from Johns Hopkins University, which is right up the street from where she lived. So it is definitely institutional. And I think, and it is also how medical professionals are taught on how to disregard Black bodies. So yes, absolutely.
Michelle froze there. Anyone else got it?
Yeah, and I will also jump in there that because in that belief there with the women who were experimented on, it was that belief that Black women could take pain or they didn't feel pain in the same degree. And I think that sometimes that we may even not so much internalize that ourselves, but at the same time begin to pile things on and carry loads and carry weights and help others to the degree that we forget about or overlook our own needs and our own full capacity. That we are these super women, you know, on the inside, or that we believe that, you know, and the world even believes to some extent that we're the super women. And we carry that at a cost to our own health and our own risk, that we don't take the time sometimes to fall back and give ourselves time to even recuperate and recover from running from one disaster or trauma, or, you know, putting out a fire over here and helping someone over here. That that happens to us sometimes and impacts our health as well as and it's overlooked, that the fact that we are human, expendable, you know, and have shortnesses and weaknesses, and we're not always superheroes.
Thank you. Jessica, you wanted to jump in here? What do you think?
I can. I guess I was thinking about Henrietta Lacks was mentioned, and just talking about the way that some of these things that have started long ago still impact us today. I mean, HeLa, those are her cells, the HeLa cells.
Right. Yeah.
They're being used in COVID research now.
Yep.
So we are still seeing the impact all the way, and that's true for almost all of the different disparities that Regina talked about. And I would say, you know, for my answer to that question, I think racial capitalism is probably the biggest threat to Black women, and it's the biggest threat to everybody. But because of the way society places Black women, if you are constantly needing someone to produce, it's going to be someone. And in our society, it's Black women.
Yeah, I was thinking about this idea of like Black female women bodies being seen as a commodity for consumption, and how like
Yes.
we're like supposed to be never endingly consumed, and we're consumed not only outside our communities but within our own communities, right? In some ways we're placed at the center and have this kind of hyper visibility as being the center of our own communities, and yet at the same time we're invisibilized, like Breonna Taylor, right? Like, why are we not still marching for Breonna Taylor? Like, there's still no justice for her murder because in some ways she's invisible, right? Just another Black woman's body being consumed by white racist white supremacy. So like, in some ways it's like we're hyper visible, but we're also in some ways just to be consumed. So
that's interesting, Chantel. You bring up a great point, which can move us to the next question. Studies show, empirical studies show that Black women are often overlooked by social justice movements. You know, we're there, but we're not there, right? We're there. Oftentimes we're carrying the bulk of the load, but we're not seen. We're invisible.
Well, who started Black Lives Matter?
Why? Well, so let's talk about it. But why are we? We're invisible even in movements where we know most movements are started really by Black women, by women, just say women.
And carried by, and birthed by, and brought to fruition, and funded by. I mean, like, we're not just starting shit. We're like carrying the whole thing through to inception. King wouldn't be king without Black women, you know, but okay. Somebody else say what you got to say.
And the Me Too movement. So Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, perfect example where it's been appropriated, co-opted by dominant culture by men. Mm-hmm. And I mean both Black and white men, and both of those major movements within the last 5 years have been started by Black women.
That's right.
And I think about the careful work that was done in the movements that we're naming now, that we're talking about, to sort of lay out what here's the 10-point plan, here's the vision, here is what we want, here's the strategy. And you have all of these people misrepresenting the movement, and all of these people not correcting or not going to learn. It's not like this is secret hidden information, right? that you have to like go on a treasure hunt and like, you know the code word, like it's there, but the misrepresentation and the invisibilization, as Chantel said, of the movement that was birthed for the benefit of everyone, right? It's not just, and that's the crazy thing about the All Lives Matter retort to Black Lives Matter. I forget who said it, but that statement of when Black people get free, everybody gets free. Like, we don't remember that. And
Black people are the canaries in the mine.
Yeah.
Like if something is wrong in our society, like it's impacting us first, but we're just showing that there is something wrong. And it's interesting, if y'all remember that when Black Lives Matter first came into fruition, there were all these critiques about how there was no vision, there's no plan. And there was, and there is, and I've been constantly thinking now as it's being, I'll just say like co-opted or more acceptable in the mainstream, the Black Lives Matter. It's like, well, why now is everyone so, you're embracing it now, and now you understand. I'm like, nothing. I shouldn't say nothing has changed, but like the plan hasn't changed. Like there's always been a plan, and now we're accepting that there was some strategy there.
All right. Other thoughts on that?
I love that, Latiana, canaries in a mine. I mean, I think that's spot on. The thing about the canary is that canary dies, right? I mean, the canary is there just to die, to protect the lives of the coal miners. And that canary will be replaced with another one and another one and another one. And we see that all the time. Think about like in diversity and inclusion work in universities, there's one Black woman after another that takes that job over and over again. And they just form another committee and hire another Black woman after she burns out. Like the expendability and invisibility is palpable.
Yes, absolutely. And someone highlighted that when we talk about Black Lives Matter, we're talking about Black women who identify as queer. These are Black queer women. And that is an important piece to add to this discussion as well, right? The space that queer folk hold in all of this as well. You know, Jessica, you talked about Henrietta Lacks and the HeLa cells that are being used to put together a vaccine for COVID, a virus that's killing mostly Black, Latino, Indigenous people. But a Black woman's cells are going to save us. It all relates. Canary in the mine, whole thing. It all relates. Yeah. You guys I have not read this in years, but I want to read this poem. It's called The Bridge. But I'm not going to read the whole thing, just a bit of it, and then I want you to respond. The Bridge poem, Donna Kate Russian. I've had enough. I'm sick of seeing and touching both sides of things. Sick of being the damn bridge for everybody. Nobody can talk to anybody without me, right? I explain my mother to my father, and my father to my little sister, and my little sister to my brother, and my brother to my white feminists. The white feminists to the Black church folk, and the Black church folk to the ex-hippies, the ex-hippies to the Black separatists to the artists to my friends' parents. Then I've got to explain myself to everybody. I do more translating than the goddamn UN. Forget it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of filling in your gaps, sick of being your insurance against the isolation of your self-imposed limitations, sick of being the crazy at your holiday dinner, sick of being the odd one at your Sunday brunches, sick of being the sole Black friend to 34 individual white people. Hallelujah, that's me. Find another connection to the rest of the world. Find something else to make you legitimate. Find some other way to be the political and the hip. Talk to me, folks. Talk to me, women.
Ashe. Ashe. I think the isolation is real. The expectation of trying to translate, you know, and I have to really carve out space for myself, especially because, you know, where I'm employed and who work for me, and so because it's like trying to stand up straight in a crooked room. and I have to really carve out those spaces, because I'm a pacifist by choice, not by nature. I have chosen, and so so I'm really trying to work on that. But there are moments where I'm not so sure my pacifist voice. It's easy to ignore if you want to have that value in your life. If you claim pacifism, then so that's one thing. That's one piece of it for me. As a person who has a particular faith understanding, then white supremacists or white Christian hegemony wants to tell me what it means to be a Christian, and they want to dictate who Jesus should be for me. And my Jesus is not their Jesus, So and my understanding of what it means to be nonviolent is direct, is more direct. And so I think what I have had to do in regards to this poem just really says it starkly, clearly, and I say ashe. That's it.
Thank you, Michelle.
And Michelle, it's interesting that you brought up, your experience and Can y'all hear me?
Okay, you're kind of going in and out a bit. Keep talking.
Okay. And just let me know if I go out. But it's interesting that I hear you talk about your experience in the workplace. As what I talk to my friends about, I'm like,
Oh, darn, you're freezing up, and I know you got some good stuff to say, Latiana. All right.
Okay, I'll try again.
Okay, good, because we want to hear you.
How about now?
We hear you so far. Come on.
Okay. So yeah, my with my experience in the workplace and talking to my friends about that, I'm always saying like, you're going to get all of this young Black girl. And because there's so many times where you feel like that you gotta like dim your light or soften your tone or your position. And I'm like, who I am is not a problem. And so white people aren't really changing who they are in the workplace. So you're going to get me. And so many of my friends just feel like that they need to change who they are in the workplace. And I won't do it.
Yeah. All right.
I feel like what this poem so beautifully encapsulates for me is the violence.
Your sound, Chantel?
You can't hear me? Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying what I feel like this poem so beautifully encapsulates for me is the violence of white supremacy. I've been thinking deeply about what it means as a Black queer woman to be in recovery from white supremacy, intimate violence, and white supremacy, organizational violence, both in my workplace and in my intimate relationships, just experiencing on my body and on my psyche the violence of white supremacy. And I feel like this poem just says so beautifully, like, there's a cost to this white supremacy. It lives in my body, and I refuse to keep paying this cost for you so that you can be more fully human. You're gonna have to find another way to be human without me paying the toll for you. And I think I'm gonna be in recovery the rest of my life from the violence of white supremacy, both in intimate relationships and organizationally. But I think I just need to send this poem out to everybody, mass email, just give you a notice.
Yes.
And that poem was probably written, what? I don't know, the 70s? It's old, but it's still so real.
Very old poem.
Yeah.
I think some of what resonates for me is also even within Black space, right? Because some of the places where she's talking about being a bridge are intra, right?
Intra.
And Chantel's example of being in recovery happens in community, but you're also in recovery with people who are in recovery or not, or various stages of addiction, to use that metaphor, and we do harm to each other also in that with white supremacy, like deeply internalized. So some of that resonated for me, like some of the things that happen inside, being, explaining your sister to your father or whatever, all that stuff is also supposed to be safe space.
That's right.
This poem is really about the intersection of like being a Black woman in particular.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was thinking it much like this to what I was saying in that first response about all the roles we have to play, all these expectations of us. I'm peacemaker, I'm mediator, I'm mother, and I'm nurturing. And at some point, I mean, and people like be like, yo, tone down. What do you mean tone down? I got a right to be up.
That's sass. That's sass. That's talk back.
You know, hello. You know, the angry Black woman, you know, carrying that piece. Hello. Today, that's who I am.
Angry.
You know, but and being able to settle with that listen, take it or leave it. I am who I, particularly right about now that I'm across the threshold of 60. I ain't got no more time of pleasing, appeasing, playing safe. Definitely playing safe. Okay, it is what it is. Blood of Jesus protect me.
Ashe.
That's the energy I'm trying to carry now, though. I don't want to wait until I'm 60. I want it now, and I have it now.
Ashe.
All right, somebody asked to post the name of the poem. The poem is simply called The Bridge Poem. And the last name of the poet is Russian. I think I'm Rushin. I think it's Donna Kate Russian.
Yep.
And it's an old poem. The Bridge Poem. Somebody, I guess we're kind of moving to some of the questions of our, Nick's sending me some questions. Somebody asked to speak to the need to heal from epigenetic trauma, which Chantel was really getting at. Does anybody want to respond to the epigenetic trauma from generation to generation?
No, I think I'll say a few things. One of the realities is, and it's interesting, Joy DeGruy wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, which is about epigenetic trauma. They dismissed her book. Can you imagine a Black woman? They dismissed her book, but recently studies came out calling it epigenetic trauma, and I don't want to disparage another group. So, but that had validity. That had validity with the other group, and the idea that, and yes, in our bodies we carry the generational trauma. I carry the trauma of my father watching his father be lynched. I mean, I carry that in my body. I carry the trauma of my great grandmother being a product of rape, and they used to call her red because she was so light. I carry that trauma. I carry that trauma of my people who were from Sierra Leone and from Burkina Faso being forced in the bottom of a ship and crossing the oceans, you know, butt to head for 6 months, lying and feasting. I carry that trauma in my body, and to think that we don't, that it does not impact our, and if we don't carry the, you know, there's the 400 years, you know, 1619, and to think that today that there's no repercussions for that. I mean, I for us, because there is an understanding, because you know, no one has any issues with talking about PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and this is generational PTSD. And so what I think is a solution, because I don't want Philip to tell me, okay, thank you. But anyway, so for PTSD, for persons of African descent, I would strongly suggest emotional emancipation circles, because the Association of Black Psychologists and the Association of Black Social Workers, and they have created a healing process that's Afrocentric for persons of African descent. And this has gone all over the world, because there are emotional emancipation circles on the continent of Africa. There are emotional EECs in Brazil. There are all over the world, because colonialism, white supremacy, you know, religious hegemony has done a number for a lot of people, but for them, this group of people have created a process for persons of African descent. So look up emotional emancipation circles.
Thanks, Michelle.
That was good. Also, Dr. Joy does have YouTube videos talking about this as well. And so I've listened to her YouTube videos about it. My mom dropped that on me and I was like, yes, thank you. Here's some theory. But I do feel like two things I want to say. Like, we do carry historical trauma. we
Mhm.
also carry historical healing. So I want us just to understand that, like, yes, we have this historical trauma that we're carrying from our ancestors, that we get re-traumatized every day living in the empire, white supremacy empire of America, but we also carry the healing as well, because there's no way we could be here today if our ancestors didn't know how to heal enough to make it through another day, right? So how do we also tap into that ancestral healing? And for me, a lot of that work has been with Reiki, just like sitting in the presence of my ancestors and getting messages from them and being with my body and not seeing my body as a source of only trauma and pain and heartache, but also a space of healing and reclamation. And so that has been so powerful for me. Anything that gets me out of like trying to logic my way out of white supremacy, which is impossible, and into my body and tapping into my ancestral healing has been really important to me. So I would say we got healing in us too. We got to really be able to, maybe these circles help us get there. There's also a document called Racial Trauma is Real, put together by some social workers, that helps you walk through a plan of recovery from when you experience racialized trauma, which is like every day if you're Black.
Yeah, I think it's really important to hold on to exactly those things that you two have mentioned, those methodologies and those traditions, because even as we proceed on in history, we are surrounded by people and the culture at large telling us that happened a long time ago, or it didn't happen to you, so what is your problem? And so the constant barrage of negation of that reality is one piece of it. But then two, in this era of all of these recorded instances of people experiencing physical violation of their bodies and death, it's so hard to avoid. It's just become unreal how much of that we are subject to day after day after day. And this summer, well, every summer, I say this every summer, we get all these new incidents, but it is what people are talking about. And one of the things we experienced to sort of deepen that trauma that is that as seemingly everybody in the world got aware that racial terrorism is real, everybody wanted to post the visual proof of that. And so for a couple of weeks in June, it was like, yeah, I'm just gonna like not internet right now because it's not healthy. So those healing places. Mm-hmm.
Pornographic. It's using black trauma. It's pornographic. They're getting off on it, and I'm just not watching it. I'm just like why? Why do I need to watch? Why do I need to watch this one more time?
Right. I don't watch it.
Yeah.
And I just want to add the other piece of the journey that about I love the emotional emancipation circles. I don't know about Reiki yet, but I've just been learning meditation to a lot deeper level, because one of the other sources of healing would be connections. Like with y'all sister friends right here, sisters right here. But because of social distancing and sheltering, not to be able to connect could actually been harmful. So I'm really thankful that Sister Avi Helton is a doctor and does sound vibrations and healing and meditation, that centering and being in a quiet space. I used to think that walking and meditating while I was walking was my thing to help me. But then you got to be alert because, you're out in the public. So I've been finding more and more, learning to light candles, burn incense, put oil on, have the music, and just quiet and center and try to connect with that source, that power, that strength within has been my grounding piece through this unstable time, through this, I say.
So what about, maybe two more questions here, and then we'll see if there are some people on Facebook who have some questions. I'll wait to see if Nick sends us anything. I want to talk about our relationships with, particularly with white women. Part of that poem talked about, she said, I am the sole Black friend to 34 white people. But I'm interested in our relationships with white women in particular, and You know, if you have relationships, friendships, intimate partners, however, with white women, and how that functions, how that works for you. Do they show up for you? Are they really accomplices, not allies, but accomplices?
I will say, so I invited a couple of my white accomplices to this call. I could count them on one hand. You know, so that's it. And they're, you know, so that's the reality. And but you know, to be honest with you, I value relationships with other women of color, and that's where I find that that's where I need to connect. So, you know, for Latinx women and indigenous women, Asian women, I mean, and most of the time in those, I'm not on edge as much in those settings and with those women that I am in settings with white women, because I know a tear is going to drop because I can't control my mouth all the time. So, yes, that's what it has been for me.
Yeah, somebody's feelings always getting hurt, even though we walk and live hurt. You know, yeah, that thing gets old. That thing gets old. What other thoughts? The white women in your life.
Those who I truly am friends with, like, yes, they do show up for me, but I too can count them on my hand. I have a multitude of Black women friends, but my white women friends, like, I probably have a good like 2 or 3 that are like really, that I'm really close with and that are really my friends that I know show up for me. But what's interesting is that, like, I am one of the only, like, in my friendship group, I'm one of the only people that actually have white friends.
Okay.
Like, yeah, like, if you come to my house, you might see white people at my house, but I know that I'm not going to see white people at anybody else's house. Like, if there's a party or so.
You're gonna have a sighting. Yeah, I was definitely that Black woman that was plenty of white women's one Black friend. And I went through a little bit of a culling. And the impetus of that was I started centering my Black female queer body unapologetically, and it cleared a lot of people out of the room.
It will
a lot of
clear
people
the room.
couldn't be in a relationship with me if it meant that I was going to be unapologetically Black, unapologetically female, unapologetically woman. It was just too much, and I realized I was making a lot of accommodations to make the friendship possible. When I stopped making those accommodations, people exit stage left, or they were forcibly removed, or whatever, you know. So some of it was violent, some of these exits. But I will say that, like, to me, the Black women that, like, right, with like many others, I have it on one hand. I can count on, they will come for me, but we also have a relationship where I can very honestly say, like, yo, there's some accountability there. Like, yo, that, like, is not working for me. And they can hear me, right? And they can take it seriously, and then they can go and do their work and then come back. Those are people that have remained in my life. Others who need me to spoon feed them or nurse them into answers, they can't. When I stopped doing that, they just couldn't be my friend anymore. And I grieved that loss. But I also realized that, like, I needed to like Michelle said, I really needed to prioritize being with Black female, Black women elders, Black queer elders. I needed to spend a lot of time with Black queer community. I needed to prioritize women of color, people of color, queer people of color unapologetically. And that just meant that my energies were not available for other people.
Yeah.
You know, I would like to say I agree a lot with making accommodations, Chantel was saying, to maintain particularly friendships, not so much as friendships, because these were work relationships that most of the time it happens, but to have them have more understanding, you know, to stay on the path and to recognize particularly systemic racism, to help them to see what I see and what I felt in the workplace, and even times how they would contribute to it. But that's where the fatigue came in, because at some point they just couldn't see past the personal pieces and look at the systemic pieces, the structural pieces, and how they could even make a difference. I mean, or just plain was scared to make a difference. And then I'm like cut off now. you know, what they call that cordial stuff, you know, just, hey, you know, I became the passive aggressive because I just ain't got no more time to even fake it. I mean, to push any further for understanding or even for true workmanship. I mean, I live on the edge as far as pushing the boundaries, particularly against systemic injustices. I'm working with juvenile justice reform and alternative programs, and they act like they don't want to hear it. Even in these times and days, they act like Black lives still don't matter, our Black youth lives don't matter. And trying to get through and to understand and make people do what they ought to do, what they're in position to do, is fatiguing. And I don't know how to come on. I thought about pulling back some, but I think I got to step up and even push harder. If not pushing, I don't know what happens after pushing. That's when you start knocking, right? So I start knocking on some doors, not heads, doors, more doors.
Yeah. I'm pretty boundaried. I'm kind of a boundary person. I mean, people tell me sometimes, oh, I don't feel like I can get close to you. And I'm thinking that's intentional. It's kind of how I walk through the world. If you have gotten in, it's because I let you in. So I have lots of friends, probably lots of white women friends, but nobody who's really on my inside my inner circle, because I learned as a younger person, there was just too much hurt in those friendships. There was too much. And as you know, you get older, you get a little bit wiser, and it's like, we can be friends, we can have coffee, we can talk, but I'm going to put you through some serious tests that you don't know you're going through before you're really in my inner circle. And not too many get in, not too many get in. And maybe that's my bit of self-care, so.
No, I agree with that. And I'm the same way. I'm in the I can count on one hand club, like some others said. And then some, it's like, yeah, we can have this surface level relationship. And I think that some of that, and probably people can relate to that, some of that is, you know, the school of hard knocks. You find out who your friends are when, you know, when various things happen. Or I know for me, this isn't the only point, but a real turning point for me, I'm not thinking of people who I thought of as like I had deep friendships with, but people that I thought, okay, they get it, I can be real around them. But 2016, after the election, when so many people that I'm acquainted with were talking about how they could not talk to their family members, or they couldn't like show up because it was too hard, or they were too scared, or whatever reason that was. I was like, okay, that's telling.
Yeah,
that's very telling.
That was 2016 was scary. I had to rethink all my relationships, especially my relations with white folks. I was like, oh my God, it was very scary. All right, well,
I saw today on Instagram, Your Queer Highness, I don't know if you follow them or not, but they posted juxtaposed video or a quote that talked about white women in particular protesting wearing masks, and then Maya Angelou reciting the poem "We Wear the Mask." And these two things together, I thought, that's exactly the experience of being often in intimate white relation with white women. There is this like, I can't have this risk, this inconvenience, this tiny little burden on me to wear this, like in this case, wear the physical mask, right? And you don't have any clue how deep the actual, in this case, mask wearing goes for Black people. And so like, that's true in so many settings. You go into a training and white people say, I don't feel safe. And they're literally incredibly safe. There is no lack of safety for them. I feel threatened, and there is no threat. Right. And so they use language that actually co-opts the actual trauma and burden of Black existence to explain their inconvenience. And so that in intimate relationship is a killer, because you compare the actual threat on a Black life with your bellyache, essentially.
Wow. And
you can't actually have any kind of solidarity like that unless someone can acknowledge that disparity. And that takes a lot of ego crushing to do.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
rich.
I remember, I think my culling began in seminary. I remember we were sitting in class and we're talking about something, and it was, it was a class on Black theology, and this white woman turned to me and asked me a question. And I'm like, I said, look, I'm not your mammy and you can't have my titty. And that was it. Because, and I realized, because then when you get into religious settings, then there's this kind of thinking that, oh, she's Black, she's woman, she's gonna be my man, or I don't know what all that was, but it began the culling, because there is this kind of I don't know, yeah, use again, sucking the life out of me. No, you will not suck the life out of me.
Right.
And I, we have to do it for our own sanity.
Amen. I personally, I'm avoiding saying anything about church coming out of my mouth tonight. I've been in white church for 20 years. We've got 11 minutes, and of course questions come in at the end, right? And we're going to do that self-care question because that's important. But here are some questions. I'm going to read them all at the same time and respond if anything resonates. What do Black women need to pay attention to in order to build stronger relationships intergenerationally? We're pretty intergenerational to some degree on this call. So what do we need to pay attention to in order to build stronger relationships intergenerationally? Here's another one. What are unique needs of boomers, Gen X, and millennials in order to relate to one another?
These are both generational questions. So
They're
I'm just
both generational. We can put them together, and I like them because I like young people. It keeps me young. But the older I get, the young people kind of make me angry. I'm just checking my language and checking my breathing. You ain't breathing right. But I hang in there. And these two young people right here laughing at Jessica and Chantel, because they know we've had our conversations. All love. But you know what I mean? So let's talk about this intergenerational stuff.
So I've recognized, particularly a couple of years ago, like how much I call it like that older Black woman energy. So my grandma that you all know passed probably like a while ago now, like 4 or 5 years ago. And then I was pregnant 2 years ago, and I realized like that missing her not being around, I was like, ooh, I need something. So I actually ended up calling somebody, like calling an older woman. I'm about to cry, but calling an older woman that I'm close with and saying, I need you to step in. I need that older maternal energy. Like, I need you to step in, like, as my grandma. But what was funny is that, like, I really went through my head, like, okay, who is available right now? Who's going to be able to give me what I need? Because there were a couple people that could have, like, stepped in that would have been willing. But I'm like, okay, proximity, who's going to be able to talk to me? Like, I had to really think about what my needs were, and recognizing that, like, I need that energy. When I think about my life, like, I always have somebody, an older Black woman that is close. Or an older woman that's really close to me. I need that intergenerational love. And I didn't realize that my grandma was my girl until she was gone. I was like, oh, it was really close.
Wow. That's beautiful. Other thoughts?
I need y'all. Like, I have always been that young woman. Now I'm getting to a little bit, am I middle age? Who knows? Anyway, don't worry about it. I've always been that young woman who was not ashamed to make a fool of myself to be invited by the grown folk in the room, right? I don't mind. I'll sip my sippy cup, my kid's juice box while y'all talk, and I'll be quiet to hear what the grown folk gonna say. Because there has been so many lessons. And what I realized for me was I, as a young person, needed to go out and find older Black elders because they were still actually working. They were not sitting up at home. They were still actually actively in organizations, working, dismantling, trying to figure out how to survive. And so, like, I actually had to go put myself in proximity to them because the way for them to come find me, they don't have that luxury. Like, they're not, like, there's no safety net waiting to catch them so they could just rest already, which I think as Black young people, we need to think about how we're going to care for our Black elders as they age. Like, we need to be part of that safety net for them. But you better believe I was like, I will get myself in that car with you. I'll be annoying. I'm gonna text, email, and you could tell me all about myself. But at the end of it, you're gonna bless me, right? So like, you could talk about me, how I don't know what the hell I'm doing, sure, but you're gonna bless me at the end. And so I have really made it a priority in my life to surround myself. And what I'm seeing happening now is other young Black people coming up and kind of looking at me like, okay, can I get in your car and ride with you? Can you, talk to me about how you made some decisions in your life? And I try to be as open-handed and as present as I can be, because I know that that was so pivotal to me in my formation. You can't do movement work without intergenerational presence. It's just not.
That's right.
We can't be cut off from each other. That's why supremacy trying to fragment us. I know Ruby Sales goes on about this a lot. Like, we can't lose our children. We can't lose the next generation to the system of white supremacy.
And we need you. I mean, I need you in my life, because look, I just found out what Lizzo was saying about the DM. I'm saying, what is a DM? I just figured that out. And I had to call my 14-year-old niece. I said, okay, hold on here. I need you to explain to me, because I love the song. I need you. I did a panel a couple of weeks ago, and the name of the organization is Progeny, young people, Gen Z, and they said, we're Gen Z, and we're putting an end to this, and they're doing work around juvenile justice reform.
Yeah.
And I did a panel discussion as an elder, and I said, look, I need you. I mean, I need you to tell me what's going on, and feel free to go. I said, but look, I don't stay up past 10 o'clock. That's the only thing I got to say. So yeah, and that's all that's important.
Good, that's good. Regina, you want to add to that? And
I just wanted to remember with Chantel that the very first time we met, we were sitting at a table with some other women at wherever we were outside of DC. And your question was, how do you do it? How do you survive in these institutions? And I may have said, girl, I don't even know, but but yeah, you are speaking the truth. You sought out the answers to your questions. And I think that, we have to make room for that. We have to be mindful of both looking forward to our elders wherever we are, but also looking behind us to see who we're bringing along.
Absolutely. This is so good. This is good too, that our final question from the Facebook group, that's going to be our final question. Nick, don't send us any other questions because we won't get to them, but it's also related to self-care, which my final question. So the question, what are you reading these days for self-care and personal growth? What author inspires you? And then I add to that, what do you do for self-care? What would you recommend? It's so important. For me, solitary time in my backyard is, I love it. I just love it.
I'll say I just got a dog, although she's egging me. I don't know where she is, but that's been one of those self-care things, because being single and living alone, I mean, it's just like, okay, I need something else to kind of give life. That I've got plants growing and I need a dog. I've also really worked on my altar, and that has given me life. I'm reading a book that Regina suggested to me, and I'm just taking my time. It's called Slay, and it's a young adult book, and it's about a young woman who develops this virtual gaming kind of thing. I am learning so much about gaming. I'm learning so much about avatars. It is such a beautiful, fun, and I'm learning so much. And so I've been reading those, and I think it's called young adult books. I mean, young juvenile books. I'm reading a book called Kira Kira. It's about a young Japanese American girl. And so those books are giving me life, because all this serious stuff is, I just can't do it. My COVID brain does not allow me to do it. It's too painful. So I need some levity.
Good.
I
So
have been. Oh, who's going?
No, go Jessica.
Go, Latiana. Oh. Okay. I have been turning back again and again to the poetry of Audre Lorde just because it is hella Black, hella queer, connects me to those parts of myself. And the way that she talks about the woman's body has been so healing and life-giving to me. And so this COVID season, we put a little backyard pool up. It's deep enough to need to climb in with a ladder. And I have been skinny dipping at least 3 times a week and experiencing myself. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful time just to center my pleasure, because we live in this world that says like, oh, your body, for a number of reasons, because it's Black, because it's fat, because it's queer, because it's woman, does not actually deserve pleasure, does not have any space for pleasure. And pleasure should be the very last thing on your list. Rest should be the last thing on your list. And if you have to have some kind of surgery, you should do it on your vacation time. You should take it out of your own pocket, right? And that's just normal for us. You know, it's normal to say, yes, I should always do what I have to do before I do what I want to do. Like, when did I get that mantra? And so, and have to is defined by someone that's not me and doesn't even look like me and doesn't actually care about me. So why do my have tos, why is my agenda, why is my to-do list dictated by someone that is fine with my destruction? So I've just decided to get naked in the pool and enjoy that. And if that don't make me no money, I mean, maybe it could, but it doesn't. But it's just been merely about pleasure and leaning into that.
All right, Latiana.
I love that. I'm not reading anything in particular for self-care, but the act of reading is self-care for me. So carving out that time to read something, like last year. So I have Amazon Prime, and they give you like free books every month. And every month I just was downloading some novel or something because I want to read. It doesn't matter like what it is, but seasonally, every spring and summer I garden, and I love it. It centers me. It's literally my own space. Nobody else in my house wants anything to do with it, and that's fine. I don't have to share it. Like, I like that it's just for me. And even like the act of growing the plants, I'm not even eating everything. I can't eat all the things that I'm growing, but I love the care of the plants and being in that space.
Awesome. Anybody else?
I've been reading Colorizing Restorative Justice by a number of their friends as authors and stories who have been told. Because this is the work that I do, as I've been pushing restorative conferences and promoting about restorative justice in the community. Books like this, give me the resource, give me the language to help build a case, to help bring about understanding, and that helps me in my walking daily. And so I find it healing, even though it can still be heavy, creating arguments in your brain, in your head, and incorporating the information. But guess what keeps me? I guess work.
Yeah.
One way or the other keeps me going.
That's beautiful. I'm not a gardener. I would like to be in my head, but I agree with what Latiana said, that when I am in my yard, whether I'm raking or, because there's always something. I live in it's a little jungle back there. Chantel, and so there's always something to do. There's paths and all kind of things. And so, but I love it. It's very healing. And it reminds me of a book I read years ago, Bell Hooks. Is it Sisters of the Yam? Was that? Yeah, Sisters of the Yam. All about the earth and healing. I need to revisit that. But that was a wonderful healing book.
And she has a book about like Black love between Black women, or Black. Do you guys know the other one she has about Black women and love and relationships?
She had a love series. You're talking about years ago?
No,
yeah, she had a trilogy.
Yes, exactly.
All about love, and then
all about love. Right. I really affirm that, like, I'm doing several practices that all of you are doing as well, like pleasure, high up on the list, growing things, high up on the list, time for solitude, high up on the list. So it lets me know that I'm in good company. I actually, there's 2 books that I'm like taking my time. Like, I'm definitely reading YA and other just novels just to like give me some escape. But There's a book called Revolutionary Mothering that I'm taking my time like ingesting, and also Rebellious Morning. I have that's one at least here, which is both these are anthologies and centering people of color, queer people of color, and just this one's about grief. So lots of things to be thinking about how we grieve and how we grieve in a way that helps us to heal, but also.
You know, you mentioned, I'm glad you mentioned the mothering piece. Somebody did have a question about
revolutionary mothering.
How we mentor.
Yes, exactly. I have been really thinking about how do I I've been on so many Zoom panels lately, and I've really decided that I'm gonna have my kids want to sit in the room with me while I talk, like they're gonna sit in this room and talk like while I'm talking. I'm not gonna like try to carve out this space to perform professionalism. Like my kids need to be able to be present when I do this work. Otherwise it's fragmenting me. So I'm trying to figure out how do I be more integrated in my mothering in a way that feels revolutionary, and that mothering is not just for people who identify as women or have a uterus, right? So that's what I love about this Revolutionary Mothering book. It's really inclusive. So that's some of my reading, but also self-care practices. Same.
Well, it's 9:03, even though we started a little bit late.
Regina's not gonna say self-care practices.
Oh, I'm sorry, Regina. Yeah, she can.
Yeah, a lot of what you all are doing. I'm reading a lot of fiction. I'm reading more fiction this year than I've read probably in the last 10 years, and I'm very, very grateful for it. And listening to more music, and just, I have I rent, so I don't have a yard I can dig in, but I have a container garden that is, it's my little, digging in the dirt and deadheading the flowers and picking the tomatoes is, there's something very healing and grounding about that. So echo a lot of what y'all said.
As Black people, it's just so important that we reconnect to the earth and to the land. We've just been so disconnected in so many different ways. And like we feel good because we're supposed to feel good getting close to the environment and being in the dirt and being in the soil and growing things and growing our own food and the justice around that. We're supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. My dog just walked by and looked at me like, I need to go outside. Hey, this was rich. It's always good to talk with y'all. I feel like I'm hanging out on the back porch talking to my buddies. This was rich. Thank you so much. Folks, we are Roots of Justice. We are the Black women trainers of the team. There are other trainers, and we've enjoyed being with you tonight. If you want to support us, I think Nick put this in the chat. You can send us something through Cash App. Cash App, we're Roots of Justice, Inc. Whether you do or don't, we're going to love you anyway. Thanks for being with us. Everybody say bye. Bye.
Bye.
Black mother love. Goodbye. Good night.
Bye,
and
y'all.
all of
Good
that.
night. Love y'all.
Night.